we're going to talk about AI and generative AI in particular. So I'm sure that all of you would have heard the term AI for a very long time. So the first time I heard about it was more than 30 years back. And at that time, it was a mythical thing. As far as we are concerned, I knew that it was there. But what exactly that is, or how exactly it can be used, is something that we did not know. That was just a chapter or a subject that we had to study in college. But fast forward to November 2022, exactly 1 year earlier, so there was some disruption that happened. With ChatGPT coming in, we heard this new term called generative AI. And today, that technology is there in our hands. Whether you are a 10-year-old child or a 70-year-old grandfather, you can use that. So there is something about generative AI that affects our day-to-day lives already. So what I was telling the panelists earlier that, all the emails that we are getting right now are a lot better structured. They don't really have too much of grammatical errors. So we see that every day. So when we talk about generative AI, so we do have a panel that's out here who knows the stuff, who are industry veterans. So we have John, we have Abhirami, we have Ashish, and we have Nilanjan. So they will probably talk a little bit about what they do, in your introduction. And after that, we will just have a round of discussions about certain main topics on Gen AI. And if time permits, then we might be able to take a couple of questions, but only if time permits. Okay, so we will start with you, John. You can just give an introduction about what you do.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. So myself, John Mathew, me and 5 of my friends, we co-founded Riafy around 10 years ago. So we create generative AI systems without using any client data. So the whole idea is data is one of the most treasured things in the world right now. So we kind of create AI systems for large enterprises like banks, airline industry, and so on and so forth, without having the client to kind of shell out any data.
Okay. Abhirami?
Thank you, John. Thank you for introducing me. You can call me Abhi, if that's easier. I have over 17 years experience in industry for software development centered around databases for the most part. I'm a developer advocate at Google right now, focusing on taking data through AI, ML, and now generative AI as an extension. Like I said, it's always been there. It's shinier now. John just said in the last 10 years ago, you founded a company that's centered around Gen AI. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about it and share my thoughts.
Okay, great.
Hi everyone, this is Ashish Sehdev. I'm a VP with Everest Group. We are one of the leading global research and advisory firms in the technology and technology services space. Been in the tech space for almost 20 years now. What we do is we advise all the players in the ecosystem, both the enterprises which are consuming, adopting tech for their transformation journey, as well as the supply side of tech, which is the technology vendors, system integrators, providers, tech startups, on how do you think about what products and services can they take to market, how can they compete and grow. And then also advise VCs and equity firms on some of their investment thesis and investment strategies. Glad to be a part of this forum. A lot of energy out here, a lot of discussions going on. And of course, this is a very important topic, very disruptive. So looking forward to this discussion today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. My name is Nilanjan Chakravarti. I am currently working with Hitachi in the R&D division of Hitachi India. My primary job right now is to help the different business units in coming up with new age applications using generative AI, using quantum computing, etc. I have a long experience in IoT related applications, pretty new to AI and Gen AI. By new, I mean about 5-7 years or so. So broadly, that is about me.
Keep the mic with you. Keep the mic with you. The first question is to you, Nilanjan. See, when we talk about AI, the first thing that everybody talks about is it's going to replace humans. So it's going to do everything that humans are going to do. So there might be truth in it, there might not be truth in it. So let's look at what will be the impact of AI in general and Gen AI in particular on jobs, because ultimately we are what we do, right? So let's have a chat about what kind of jobs do you see are going, what kind of jobs you think are going to stay, and what will be created. So we will have your take on that first.
I think it's a wonderful question, and you have put me in a spot. It is the most difficult question to answer today, probably. But okay, I'll start with a story. 3 months back, there was a news which came out that one mother was trying to get her child treated. She went to 17 doctors, and the complaint was the child was having toothache and his growth was stunted. 17 doctors could not come up with the right diagnosis. She typed something on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT came up with a solution. And it was proven right. So whose job is gone? Those 17 doctors are jobless now. In the field of the jobs that we have, my strong belief is that 80 to 90% of these jobs will become useless in maybe a span of 5-10 years, not too far away. And when I say 80 to 90%, I'm still being skeptical. Farmer's job will get changed. If not totally jobless, there'll be huge modifications. And people have to adapt to this. The only solution, it may sound very scary, what I'm doing today, if I'm writing applications, there are so many softwares today which can write codes for you. And it'll build an application from a scratch. So you just say that I want this application to do so and so. Generative AI comes up with there was a tweet that I saw a few days back. A techie guy, he was facing a little bit of a problem. And, generative AI completely wrote the application and it pushed it into the cloud. And this guy was just sitting and watching. So if somebody is in danger, I think I am in the biggest danger. Coders, programmers, their jobs are going to change. And I say change because they are not going to lose their jobs. It has to be a partnership. So while a lot of jobs will get changed, people will need to continuously upskill, learn new skills. People have to be taught new skills right from the schools and colleges. And that is how I see the world and the jobs will actually evolve.
Okay, great. So that's definitely from an industry perspective, so based on what you do. But let's hear the same topic from an analyst perspective. So when Everest Groups goes and then talks about, so how do they talk about the job problem?
Yeah, the way we think about it is, let me draw some parallels to what we saw in automation. 10-15 years back when there was a lot of automation, and then last 7-8 years, a lot of robotic process automation, RPA came in. I think there was this whole narrative about, oh, it's going to take away a lot of jobs, what will happen, and will it impact offshoring? will the outsourcing industry die, and so on and so forth. But look at what's happening. The industry is absolutely flourishing. What it has done, of course, is that some of the jobs, especially at the lower level, have become obsolete. But it has also added a lot of newer jobs. So I think the story here is not about elimination, but a large part of jobs is going to be augmented with Gen AI and AI at large. So if you look at writers, if you look at creatives, if you look at musicians, if you look at for the individuals who may use this technology for their own personal use, or if you look at enterprises which are using Gen AI in sales, marketing, customer service. You talked about coding, app dev, code generation. So some of those jobs will absolutely be impacted. But again, the low-end jobs. So you won't be just a coder, but you would be augmented with the capability of Gen AI to now do some more higher-level evolved jobs. So the nature of jobs will evolve for sure. It will require reskilling and upskilling, absolutely. So a lot of newer areas like prompt engineering, data science, data engineering, curating high quality data, data models, AI audits. So a lot of newer jobs, newer areas will also come into play.
Okay, great. So we are talking about new jobs that are going to get created, and then we are even talking about an AI workforce. And one of the things which I would want to ask John is, how do we create an AI-ready workforce? So what are all the things that we need to do? So as an organization, what kind of skills, what kind of training do we do? And then how do we ensure that in about, maybe in the next few years, how do we have an AI-ready workforce out there?
Okay, so I think primarily a couple of things have to change. One is the fact that our education curriculum probably has gotten a lot outdated. That has to change so that formal education becomes a lot better. I think the second piece is we as humans need to learn more soft skills, right? Because if you look at what AI can do and AI can't do, it probably cannot do human strength things like collaboration, cannot probably do critical thinking, and it definitely cannot be creative, right? So these human skills are pretty soft and we don't really learn them in school. So, because if you look at all the subjects which deal with all of these three things are probably at the lowest end of that spectrum, right? So emphasis on these soft skills so that we understand creativity, we understand critical thinking, and we understand the fact that, hey, we need to be empathetic and move forward, right? So that is very important. Second piece is AI will automate a lot of things. But at the same time, it cannot really replace humans because there might be some people at some place who need to be in place for oversight. So I think easiest way to think about this is, all of us have pens, right? We use pens to write. Now, even if we are given the same pen, probably the way I write will be different from the way you write, everyone writes. So that handwriting is something that we have learned over years of our dexterity and our training. In a similar way, everyone will have AI tools, but how they use it to create things, that will still be reliant on that human being itself. So to create an AI-ready workforce, we have to kind of have that training so that people understand that, hey, this is an enabling tool. Just like how I can write nicely with my pen, I can write nice things with my pen, I can write beautifully with my pen. Same way I can write harm, hate speech, all of that. So how do we kind of change this mindset is what's most important. And oftentimes we become threatened by things that we do not know. If you look back at all your fears in life, all of that are things that you don't really understand. Now we need to get that understanding in place that, hey, these systems are here to kind of help you get better at things that you do and not to replace you. I think that enablement will also kind of help.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So we talk about jobs, and then we talk about, say, how do we make sure that, we do have an AI-ready workforce. So now let's look at how the future is going to be moving forward. So there were far too many disruptions in our lifetime itself. Say, I have seen in the early 1990s the creation of the World Wide Web, which was a huge moment in our evolution. Then in the mid 2000s, iPhone. That was another major change that happened to the world. And then now, generative AI. I think I can put all of these things in the same sentence together because these are similar changes. So these are disruptions. And then one of the things which Gen AI has done is, earlier we used to learn the language of the machines to tell it what to do. Now the machine has learned our language. So that's a major change. So that's a disruption. So moving forward, what are the trends that you see? The question is to Abhi. What are the trends that you see out there in general at a macro level? But at the same time, we need to look at, see, there are far too many entrepreneurs here. What are the little things that they can start doing today to take advantage of what is happening? How can they get into that AI mode and then create enterprises from India, maybe from Kerala, to rule the world?
Thank you. That's a very interesting and intriguing question for me. So, show of hands, how many of you use Google search on a day-to-day basis, or at least have used? Right, we all do. So, how many of you spend hours reading through, or spent in the past reading through the material that's available to find out the answer that you want for a question that you're seeking? Several hours, right? We've all spent so many hours. So the point is, the way I see generative AI is minimizing that total number of hours that you spend consolidating and making sense of the information that's already available. That's all it's supposed to do. That's all it's meant to do. Accurately, with high precision. It is generating content, of course, but if you ask me, do you think or do you trust in the content that it generates randomly out of the blue? No, you obviously have to provide a context. You have to provide a resource or ask it to tag the resource from where it's fetching that context and summarizing the information for you. So that's the way I look at it. Not just summary, whatever answers that it's providing. So looking at the future, going back to the example that Mr. Niladri also brought up about the 17 doctors, I would not say that the 17 doctors lost the job, no offense. I would just say that 17 doctors could have taken the help of the chatbot to consolidate the information or to bring in all the scenarios possible. Maybe there is so many advancements and they probably did not pay attention to the class. Maybe they were the lockdown batch doctors or something, right? So they probably did not pay attention to all the things. But that's where these chatbots and other things could come into play. That because would you go to a doctor or would you just go to a chatbot to get your questions answered, or would you still go to a doctor? Right, so that's a question. Even though it is able to give answers, we would still go to a doctor, but we'll go to a doctor who is well equipped with technology. So that's one takeaway I would say for entrepreneurs. Trust your guts, trust your instincts, start from design, like from the scratch, whatever you've got to do, plan ahead, but use these assistants like generative AI, whether it's depending on the structure or the format of data that is important for your business. Nowadays, unstructured data accounts to more than 85% of resource that any business uses. So depending on what it is for you, use generative AI to that advantage and start thinking about it from the scratch. Don't rely on the solutions that is provided, rather provide a context, provide a resource from which it can bring in a lot more information is what I would say.
Okay, great. So again to Ashish, so the question is, what are the opportunities that we can tap into, that the entrepreneurs out there can tap into today? Are there any low-hanging fruits? Are there something that at least two of the entrepreneurs sitting here say that, yes, this is good, let me go and start working on it, and then let me build my product or let me build my business in the next 3 to 6 months, whatever. Do we have those kind of areas, at least do we have those kind of pointers that we can give it to these guys?
Yeah, that's a tough question. If I had a magic bullet silver an answer, I would probably be jumping into it right away. But I think just to set some context, I mean where is Gen AI being adopted at an enterprise level? If you see, generally around and the top 5 use cases generally are around knowledge management. Anywhere you have organizational knowledge or a robust base of knowledge available, whether it is within employee base, customer base, or within organization functions, whether it's customer service, sales, marketing, operations. That's one big area. The second is around synthetic code generation, so synthetic data, for example. That's a big area. Another area where Gen AI applications are seen, a lot of adoption has happened, is around code generation. Anywhere where there is summarization and analytics required, and then process discovery. So some of these areas are very, very common adoptions of Gen AI at an enterprise scale. Now, when you think of what are the opportunities for startups, the way I look at it is there are two lenses to it. One is either you could be a Gen AI enablement startup, so you're helping other companies to adopt and scale Gen AI, right? In which case, for example, data is a big space. So can you help other companies to look at curating high quality data, building data models? We have an example of Mosaic AI, which now got sold to Databricks for I think 1.3 billion, which was in that space around experimentation, building guardrails, validation. So a lot of that, the whole data space is one space. The other is, for example, around privacy, security, risks. Again, we believe a lot of newer firms with new tools, which would be in the monitoring space, AI audits, those kind of things will kind of come into play. The other part of the lens is being the core Gen AI company, right? So that's where you have a opportunity to fundamentally disrupt a business, right, or a product or a service, where you could build or re-architect or build a whole tech from scratch, and then disrupt the incumbent. So that's an area. The other area is if you are an existing business, then how can you play on your strengths? How can you leverage your existing strengths? So for example, you are strong on user experience. Now, how can you use Gen AI to further enhance your user experience and create differentiation in the market? And of course, there is the productivity, which is, as we were talking about, productivity for all, right? So if startups can become more productive, generate code, write better content, more effectively access to customers, so your costs for building tech, for acquiring customers, for marketing, all that can come down. So there is that layer as well. So there are a lot of opportunities in this space, of course. We are still very early, by the way, and I think the next few are going to be very exciting.
Okay, great. That was fantastic. So when everything is good, there can be some not good things also. So we use AI or generative AI as tools to improve productivity. These tools can be a friend, can be friends, can be companions, can be advisors. But at the same time, some of these could be problematic too. So there can be thieves, there can be fraudsters. We have heard quite a lot of those kind of cases happening right now. So risks and obviously threats are very big. And also, in the absence of regulations currently, I'm sure that some of the Western countries are looking at regulations. So what are the implications, or what are the things that we need to look at when it comes to addressing the threats and risk, I would want John to take a look at that thing to start with.
So I would like to go back to my analogy about the pen. You can decide what to write with it. So obviously people are going to be using it for a lot of bad things also. Bad actors are like among us. But I think like if you're a company who's trying to kind of build things in AI, whether it's as a product or trying to integrate it into your workflow so that your day-to-day operations become far more efficient, there are certain things that you can kind of look at. Like if you're creating a workflow, let's say, don't automate it 100%. So never automate fully. Always keep high-risk elements for a human vetting. So there's always a human in the middle who kind of signs off on whatever is being done. Because if you think about it, that's how work has always been done. Like people come to you with a finished product, someone vets it. There is always quality control before it goes into production. So never automate 100%. Make AI an enabler so that it augments your work, but does not completely 100% automate, right? Next one is put safeguards in place so that processes that are high risk are always slower to execute. So for example, let's say we create a system, I think Microsoft recently announced something where you can create deepfakes using Azure. Now, here what they have done is they have put in safeguards wherein the process to create these would be slow, right? So that you can't just create massive amount of misinformation. So if you have a product that's kind of high risk, ensure that whatever is being created goes out or gets created very slowly. The other one probably is to kind of put a tiered pricing model. So whoever gets access to these high quality or high efficiency functions tend to pay higher, right? So there is some kind of paywalls around it. And most importantly, I think as human beings, our parents have always tried to create ethically sound human beings. But like if I have a show of hands, how many of you think you are an ethically sound man or woman? Okay, there are a couple of people. Okay. So I think honestly, like it's very difficult because over time, like the circumstances, situations kind of the brainwash us into doing things unethical. In a similar way, no matter how many safeguards you put in place, AI is going to step out of those boundaries. So it's a constant process. So there is no one definitive guideline, but we kind of tend to kind of improve it as bad actors figure out different ways.
Okay, so you talked about ethical AI development. Okay, so that's a big topic, So I'm sure that you are one of those people who advocates that a lot. So what exactly is that, and then how can you explain that to somebody who either knows it or who doesn't know? Say, for example, I don't really have a complete idea of what it is. So how do you explain that to me?
So I think when you say an AI is ethical or like ethical AI, it's about trying to create an intelligent system that is helpful, but at the same time it does not cause harm. Now this is far more complex than it sounds because in order to make an ethical AI system, you have to have very solid data, which is one of the hardest commodities in this whole spectrum, right? Because I think fundamentally to create an AI system, you need four things. One is like the data set, then the tool set. Thanks to advancements in technology, tool set is now easy. Everybody now has access to the tools. If you want to create an AI model and create an AI function, that is possible today thanks to the advancement of technology. But data is not readily available. Then you need the mindset and the skill set. Skill set, let's say we kind of create education systems which train people to get that skill set. But the mindset is far more challenging. In a sense, it's a constant failure is what you look at. Because you try to create an ethically sound system, the next minute someone will break it. Then you go back to the drawing board, you create again. So you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's not an easy kind of journey, right? So an ethical system, if you think about it, is something that's helpful, but at the same time, it's not harmful. Now, as I said earlier, to create, you need proper data. You need a community of people. It's just not about your company or your team. Your team itself will need diversity. So I can quote an example, right? A bunch of men create an AI model that kind of, cipher or like filters through resumes of candidates. Now, eventually what happened is because the men were training this model, anybody who has a reference that, hey, I studied in an all-women's college, all-women's school, or I did a project where it was one gender alone, that resume started getting like deprioritized in the list. So do you think it is fair? Do you think it's ethical that something like this happens with your resume? Obviously not, right? So you need community participation. You need not just your team, your people, because if you think about the biggest biases in human life, all of it has come from one small team. Now, we have this ideology. That's how all propaganda kind of starts. So that needs to be set apart. So we need a lot of community participation, different people to come into the team to contribute, sound values. Yeah, and as I said, it's very challenging as our parents try really hard to create like humans who are sound, who are fair, who are unbiased, who are empathetic. In a similar way, we'll also fail, but we owe it to our children and grandchildren that we create solid systems like these.
Okay, great. So before we get into the next question, so if anybody from the audience have questions, please write them down and then hand it over to the volunteers. We will take a few questions if you have. So volunteers, please ensure that we do get questions from whoever would want to ask. Okay. So the next one, we have as part of Kerala government, we recently got a mandate from the government saying that you have to start using AI. Okay. So it's a very interesting thought process that came from the government. But the thing is, all of us are different. And then government is making it mandatory for us to use AI. So how do we think that, so governments can use AI? So Nilanjan, can you just take this?
Yeah, I think the possibilities are many. The first use case that I can think of is about e-governance. So, in Karnataka we have, I'm not so sure about Kerala, but in Karnataka we have several e-Mitra, Kaveri, all these initiatives that the government has taken. There probably it is still very difficult for the citizens to reach out to access those services. So probably one idea is, just use a chatbot over there with generative AI and easily get all your queries solved online. I can think of, okay, now I'm not talking of generative AI per se, but AI in general. Think of smart cities and what they are doing. When you are being watched by a camera, what actually can happen behind the scenes is that it can detect an event like a chain snatching. Someone just, comes on a motorbike, snatches the chain and goes off. These kind of applications, I think, rather than just having a camera looking at things, you can have AI embedded so that you come up with a lot more of a value proposition. Infrastructure, where you look at a bridge and then you see how the bridge health is, and you try to predict when that bridge, if at all, is going to give way, when it might fail. And there are things like, of course, water management, where you do a demand prediction and accordingly you prepare your infrastructure. I mean, from the governance point of view, there are almost every area where the government touches the citizen. I think every area there is a huge scope of bringing in AI and augmenting the services that the government provides today.
Okay, great. So that's from a government perspective. So in general, from a society's perspective, what will be the impact of AI? You say you as an, Abhi, you as a advocate for AI, especially in Google. So you can just, talk to our entrepreneurs about how AI is going to impact the society. What will be the kind of change that it can, it can bring to our thought process, our children, our system, to the society as a whole. So can you just give us a few cents on that?
Absolutely. When it comes to society, like all of our guests shared today, the main thing is that it it transforms the way we do things, right? It makes things easier. Like whatever we've been doing manually, from filling out forms, or even if you do it in a system, how many of us read the terms and conditions, or how many of us go through anything that you sign up for? You just say, okay, this is what I want, I'm paying for it, that's it. Use your credit card and you're done, in and out. But are we really concerned about what the terms and conditions says, or what you're filling out for, what you're actually volunteering for? So these are some of the things that can be easily summarized and automated. Life is actually a little bit easier with AI. So when it comes to society, absolutely yes. And a lot of not just entrepreneurial things, philanthropic things, and it just improves the status of the society altogether overall. Government can mandate a lot of things through generative AI and make it seamless and smooth and automated, particularly with generative AI, right? Like in the airports these days, we have, I don't think I saw that in Trivandrum, but in major cities we have Digiyatra. Even though that is AI, it's not specifically about generative AI, but that is one of the very important examples of how it is transformed. Imagine a holiday season in Bangalore airport, the traffic and the distance, and on top of that, the queue to get inside. But now with Digiyatra, it's so smooth, you just go in, and life has been made so easy, right? So that is exactly what it is. With AI, we could go this far, but with generative AI, sky is the limit. So I think there is a lot of things that we can accomplish with generative AI.
Okay, great. So there is a question from the audience. I thought that this is very relevant. And one of the things that we touched upon is regulations. So recently there was this whole discussion in the UK that, so they're going to come up with something. So the question is how to prevent unethical AI to take control using regulations. So is there any way we can regulate AI? Obviously the issue is that, say, it is universal, right? Not a single government can do it. So what are your, can you, no, anybody can pitch in, okay? So this is a question.
Yeah, so I think regulation can come only from collaboration. In a sense, whatever ethical standards or ethical guidelines and processes that each company kind of creates and follows, that needs to be kind of published for the larger audience. Right? That is the only way I personally see this thing actually going anywhere, because nobody is like the ultimate know-it-all in this. Everybody is figuring it out. So the best way is like each company has to kind of come forward and share, especially the policy that they have in place, to kind of ensure their ethical systems are working well, right? So we had this back and forth discussion when we were in the Valley a couple of months ago at Google Cloud's next event, where we were trying to kind of understand how do we kind of create policies in place. Now the problem with policies is the policy makers probably are not aware enough, right? But then the question is, who is aware enough? Then that again becomes a problem because nobody is aware enough at this point. So it's because if you look at the open source world where Gen AI is evolving, the like enhancement happen like every minute, right? Every new minute there is a new model that's come out that's probably better than the last one. So the only way I think way forward is for the communities kind of come together to collaborate and then put all their guidelines forward so that nobody has to kind of work around it. So we are again in the process of creating a framework like that based on our work in the last 10 years. So it kind of creates some rough network within the country.
Okay.
So he answered that, covered a lot of things around it. I just wanted to touch base on a few things when it comes to ethical AI too. So we are creating it. Unlike other resources which will, like Google search or anything else for that matter, it will answer questions based on what information is already there. So you can just create this is our judiciary system, or this is what ethics means, and this is what morality means, or anything of that sort. You can just feed and get the answer. But that's not how generative AI works, just that. In addition to that, it also learns from what is being taught from behavior and everything else. So ultimately it boils down to, are we ethical? We are the creators of the generative AI system. So if we are not, there won't be 100% accuracy, and we can't expect that from the generative AI system. But one thing which we can assure is that, for example, the vision based, the images that are generated from Google, for example, Google's generative AI's APIs, they're all, this was announced in Next, they're all watermarked to say that these images are generated by generative AI system. So that will help us understand that this is not, this is probably something like a deep fake or something that's been created or generated. So we are aware of that. So this is just one example and one data format, which is images. You can do this for videos, and you can do this with all the data. This is one way of addressing it. One last thing I would say is that prompt engineering. Again, it's a bit going into the technicalities of it, but still it's important because we all know what it is now. There are so many job opportunities now that says, hey, prompt engineers wanted. So yeah, so what you have to think about is, you're the one who's asking the question. When you're asking the question, just don't blindly ask the question and say, find out the answer, the sky is your limit. That's not how it should be. Provide a context, provide the resources that you think it's valid enough, that contains unbiased data. So when it's ethical, it is also unbiased. It is also touching on everything that you feel is correct to that particular industry or that particular area of business you're questioning about. And then ask the question along with the context. So that would be a better way to solve this also.
Yeah, just building on that point of ethical AI and biases. I think there's a lot of excitement about Gen AI, so people thinking about businesses. But again, there are certain concerns or risks in this whole space, which I think is very important for us to understand, because they can have huge implications on the business that you are building and the ecosystem. So for example, we talked about data privacy, right, and data security. A lot of examples where accidentally there has been code breach, code being leaked into the OpenAI system, and so on. So how do organizations create those regulations, those policies within the org? How do companies monitor and test that? So there is a whole set of companies which will going to focus on data privacy and security in a big way. Of course, there is going to be internal policy and regulations. The second area of concern is around what we call it as explainability or hallucinations, right? Which basically means that how do you verify or validate whether the output of Gen AI is actually correct, right? And because Gen AI is a probabilistic model, it's not deterministic, right? So basically you get an outcome, but how do you explain, how did we get to that outcome? So we do expect some kind of regulations and some kind of policies around that space. Then the third big one is around ownership. Who owns the output that is been created by Gen AI, right? And so we have the famous lawsuit between Microsoft and the open source community, where the open source developers have filed a suit against this team about the use of and commercial use of their open source codes, right? So who finally owns the IP? So if you're building something, these are some of the things that you need to think in mind. There's a lot more detail. I'm not getting into that, but happy to talk one-on-one. But some of the things we should keep in mind.
Yeah, so on ethical AI, I just want to put a few facts in front of you. It is not that India has been actually lagging behind. So in fact, Niti Aayog indeed came up with a framework sometime, I think, February this year. It is not an act yet, but India is deliberately going slow on this. Reason being, I think if you look at the AI market in India, the generative AI market is somewhere around $7 billion. You look at US, it is $90 billion today. But India is growing at a CAGR of almost about 20%. So I think even Prime Minister Modi spoke a few days back about the need of ethics in AI. So I think we are just rightly placed. We are taking a little time to frame an act, but we are on our way. I'll just take a little bit of a cue from here and on what Abhi also spoke about new jobs creation. Prompt engineers, the highest paid job today in the US, so that is a new job that is created. Similarly, on ethics, why not AI ethicist? Why not AI risk mitigator? So yeah, the world it'll change, it'll move in that direction.
No one will opt for it. They'll be the first ones to lose the job if something goes wrong. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we have time for one question. So we want to make it slightly more interactive. So if there is any question from anybody, please raise your hand, and then please tell your name, your question, and then whom you are asking the question to.
My name is Meera. This question is to John, sir. This question is can answer by anybody in the panel. So my question is, this is the era of deep fakes and synthetic data. So here there is a lot of synthetic data are available, deep fakes are available. So how, and this poses a major threat to the data credibility and also corrupt the actual purpose of generative AI. So how legal infrastructures or digital infrastructures in India can solve this solution and get rid of this corruption?
You want to take it?
Sure. I mean, I can, unless you want to, if I understand your question right, it's about synthetic data being formulated and how can we avoid it. Is that right?
If we build a solution, with that is purposely for with an aim, can synthetic data or deep fakes can corrupt the actual purpose of the solution, and it can bring up. Can it be like a hijacking? Can it be used for fraudulent purposes with the same technology?
So I think we talked about that particular thing before, that yes, you can, like a pen is what you use it for, right, ultimately. So yeah, you can use the same thing that is why the models and that is why the technology these days, particularly with the example that I told you about, where you watermark the objects that are generated by AI, right? So you know that this is a product or this is a result of technology that is deep tech that has been used to generate something out of the request that has been given by a particular business or a customer or a user. So yeah, measures like that definitely need to be taken if it's generated. For example, if it's a story or if it's a summary or things like that, it's harmless. But if it's going to be an image that is going to defame somebody or demean someone, then yeah, definitely it's a possibility and we have already seen that. But depends on how responsible the owners of the model creators or the platforms, the service providers who are provisioning those models, how responsible they are in making sure the measures are in place to identify whether or not something is original or something has been fabricated is important. I mean, that's where it comes into play.
Okay, great. I think that's the time that we have. So that was good, because we had a few questions in writing as well as one question a little bit more interactive. So thank you so much. Thank you all. This was a wonderful discussion. And then it was my pleasure first knowing you and then, hearing you. And I'm sure that, all of you felt the same way. And at the same time, I really appreciate your participation. And it was a fantastic audience and it's a fantastic experience. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thanks everyone, and thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to take a stab at you about that example. I just liked it. I just wanted to talk about it. Thank you everyone. Nice talking to you.